Hey, finally rolling tonight. So good to see you all today. So basically, I'm just going to give you a little bit of an introduction to what's going to happen tonight. We're going to have a small careers workshop for all of us INFJs here. I'm just going to share a little bit about my story, my background, my own career, and later on this evening, we're going to have other short interviews with four other INFJs from our group who will be. I'll be talking to them a little bit about their career, and you will see that all of us are from a variety of backgrounds, variety of careers, and so hopefully we'll give you guys who are looking for a career or what things to do once you graduate or have a career shift. Maybe give you a little bit of an idea what to expect in your next job.
Hi, Ping-Chung.
Thank
Okay,
you.
so let's start, okay?
Yeah.
Thank you for organizing tonight's career workshop, INFJ Careers Workshop. Can you tell us a little bit what made you want to run a career workshop for us?
Right. I've been thinking about this for quite a long time, and actually, some of you have been requesting to run a careers workshop. And I found, like in my own experience, that it's been pretty hard for INFJs to find a work in which they are well suited in. I mean, we're only 1% of the population. If you think about it, a lot of the mainstream careers are not really catered to INFJs as such. And I thought that having talked to a lot of INFJs in our group, that it would be nice for us to share a lot about our different careers and where we ended up and how we got there.
Were there any common themes you found from all the questionnaire submissions?
Yeah, actually, there was. There were quite a few common themes. I think there were a few things that stood out. I think one of the main things I asked was that INFJs, whether they like to work with people or do their best work alone in silence. And I found that a lot of the INFJs pretty much received about 12 questionnaires, and all of us pretty much say we do our best work alone. So whether we spend around 50% of our time or 70% of our time working by ourselves, we find we do our best work kind of alone with the door closed, whether we're booking conference rooms, I have headphones on or noise cancellation headphones on. We try and find a way to shut out that noise so we can do our really deep thinking. And the second thing I realized is like INFJs in their profession, they always look for a way to help somebody. So it's a helping profession, whether it's more directly helping someone or indirectly helping someone. INFJs are pretty much looking for a way in which they can reach out to people. And follow on from that, one of the other things I noticed is that INFJs have a kind of a big vision for the future and big vision for their own career path or whether it's to impact humanity as a whole. And that's something that really stood out. The desire to make a difference in their sphere of work and the people they interact with, whether small or big, there's some kind of overarching vision out there for them.
So, how is it like for you as an early career?
Right. I started off my career in investment banking and finance, and I know it's not a very typical INFJ career, but I did math and statistics at university, and I kind of got caught up in the early, the whole recruiting cycle when everyone was going for these, investment banking jobs and so on. So I just kind of got into it. I spent a long time there in London and Hong Kong, and I worked most recently as a hedge fund manager. And it was quite interesting because I learned a lot about the world and I learned how to interact with a whole variety of people. And I covered different countries. So, first working in London and then in Asia, I got to travel to quite a lot of different places and I did a lot of research on the ground. So, I met people from different cultures. I would talk to them and do research and investment. And I would then kind of piece it all together to get a big picture on the direction of where the stock market would go. So it was something which I found very interesting, especially in my early career. But later on, after about 10 years, I found it was starting to get a little bit dry. And I wasn't that much meaning there for me doing investment banking and finance. So I decided to kind of to look for something different, to look for a change of career, something a bit more meaningful.
So, it's working in finance something you would want to recommend to other INFJs?
I think as a graduate, if you want exposure to like a big corporate environment and you're kind of curious to see what it's like working in the big wide world, I think it's okay. Something you can do for maybe a few years, get some good training, meet a lot of different people, get good exposure to the world, and learn something about it. But for a long-term career, I think it's not something that an INFJ will be very comfortable in. It's not something that is naturally suited to our functions. I was using a lot of thinking functions, and I interacted with a lot of NT types and ST types. A lot of the men there were of these types. I don't think I met a single INFJ in 10 years in the industry.
And what happened after you left the finance industry?
Yeah, about 8 years ago, I decided to leave. I lost my job in the financial crisis in 2010, and I was deciding whether or not to go back. And it was kind of a blessing in disguise because it gave me a chance to reassess whether this is the kind of place I wanted to see myself working in, and it's something I could do long term. So I looked at my boss, and he was maybe about 8, 10 years older than me, and he was more senior. He's making more money. He's running a bigger team, and I was like, can I be like him in the next few years? Could this actually be me? Can I imagine my life like that? Living in a bigger house, driving a flashier car, and so on. But then, at the end of the day, I thought it doesn't seem to make much difference to me. I mean, I kind of reached a plateau. It's just more of the same. So I decided to take a break and not join the industry. What I did instead was I volunteered for a kind of a charitable organization. I was working with drug addicts and street sleepers of Hong Kong. And during that period of time, I spent time in like the halfway house, spent time in where they were being supervised 24/7. And I suddenly got exposure to a different side of humanity that was, even though it was on the doorstep of where I was working, those kind of glass, shiny 70-story office towers. It was just like maybe 10 miles from there. But there were these people which were living in really abject poverty and were struggling with day-to-day life, and they're struggling for survival. And when I had this experience by working with them, after around 6 months, I realized like there has to be more to life than what I've been doing. And previously in my investment banking roles, I'd always kind of, the most meaning I got out of it was actually using the money I'd made to help people. And I could sponsor charities, I could sponsor orphanages and schools in third world countries, and as well as help family and friends who were in financial need. And that's pretty much the most meaning I got out of it. But here was I doing something which was really impacting someone's life more directly. And I realized that there's no way I could go back to going that kind of soul destroying work anymore. There's almost no soul there. It was just making money day in and day out. And I really needed some space to figure out what I wanted to do. So that experience impacted me so much. I decided to leave the busy city of Hong Kong and go to kind of the extreme opposite to Brunei, a small country in Southeast Asia. It's just a population of 500,000 people, a small Islamic country, and start a small business there and see, kind of use that time to figure out what I wanted to do next in my life.
Okay, and you also told me, but this is because on a personal level, at a previous workshop, you mentioned you fall very ill once.
Right. Okay.
During that time.
Yes, actually, yeah, that was one of the big things. During my time in Brunei, it was kind of meant to be my relaxing period on a tropical island, and just chilling out and just living in a very suburban area. But I developed, after I stopped work, I developed a medical condition known as fibromyalgia. And for those of you who don't know, it's fibromyalgia, yeah. It's a chronic, incurable disease. The doctors don't know what causes it. And it's kind of affects the whole central nervous system. So my body is in constant pain. So after about a couple of years in Brunei, I was in so much pain that I couldn't do daily tasks like wash the dishes. I couldn't take out the trash without a lot of pain and numbness. I had a lot of difficulty sleeping, and I couldn't sleep properly. My arms and shoulders were pain. My neck was numb. My back was pain. I couldn't drive properly. And I couldn't even clench a fist. My fist was like, I struggled just to hold like that. And I couldn't write or use the keyboard. And something for someone like me who spent my whole life either studying at the desk or using the computer at work, it was like my whole life was over. I couldn't do anything. I was like completely debilitated. And that was a really, really difficult time for me. And it probably was my darkest moments there in Brunei.
But you look completely well now. So how did you recover? I mean,
Yeah,
along the way,
that's quite
like
interesting. I mean,
how do you do it?
yeah, I probably I look okay now, and the thing with fibromyalgia is an invisible disease, and you can't really see the amount of pain. I mean, I actually still am in pain, but I'm definitely in a lot less pain than I used to. And one of the things was in Brunei. I went to the hospital, and one of the things there was a treatment that was quite experimental. It's right. They use Chinese acupuncture needles, but they don't use it like the Chinese acupuncture where you put it on your body and it doesn't hurt. It just within channels. So the guy in the physiotherapist would take an acupuncture needle and jab it into my body, so all the way up and down my neck and my spine. And he took like a huge needle like that, and he would jab it on my bum. And as soon as he hits these points, there will be these things known as trigger points in my body, which is tight knots and bands of muscle fiber that are everywhere, thousands of them in my body. So he'll burst them. And when he bursts them, the huge energy release will happen. My whole body will like twitch. It's pretty crazy, but it's very painful. I'm making light of it now, but it was pretty painful. So I had quite a long period of time doing that. But the problem was
Did it work? Did it work?
it didn't work. That was the worst. The worst thing was that after going around the body for about 1.5 years, 70 sessions, like once, twice a week, as soon as he popped these knots, they would, within a few months later, they would grow back again, and they would come back almost as bad as they were in the first place. And it was that was horrible because I mean all the pain I've been going through, and it's still pretty experimental treatment because there is no cure for fibromyalgia. The drugs and the medication just numb the pain, but they don't actually cure the condition. I was willing to go through it, but it didn't work, and I was like, it was. I'm like in my early 30s. I'm like, that's it. It's the end of my life. And I heard of stories of people who just went completely downhill and gave up on life because you just can't do anything in constant pain. And I thought, that's it. My life is over. I don't know what to do. So I was just about to quit the treatment, and he had discovered a new thing, and that new thing was called foundation training. And the foundation training was developed in California by a guy called Eric Goodman, a former chiropractor. And he did some of the exercises with me, and I found that it worked. It worked so much, I decided to find out a bit more, and I researched more about it online. And I saw they were running a course in California, so I thought, that's it. My last throw of the dice. If this doesn't work, my life is over. So I just thought I just go all the way from Brunei to California, 16,000 miles or something. I thought I just see what happens. I'm just gonna try it out.
Foundation training.
Yeah, foundation training. Yeah.
And then after that, what do you do there in foundation training?
Yeah, it was actually a pivotal point in my journey of recovery. Eric told me, there's nobody can fix you. You have to fix yourself. And all this time I'd been relying on the treatments and passive treatments to fix me, and it couldn't. So it's now training my body to readapt and to stretch itself to burst those knots by itself. But my body was so weak at that point in time. I couldn't do like normal, like yoga or Pilates exercises. That would cause me to like my neck would be twisted like for a week, and couldn't move. So I couldn't do like normal exercises. I had to do something which foundation training, which is like to retrain your body from the beginning again. And that kind of mobility helped me to slowly have a bit more hope that I would start to have some kind of recovery. So after that, a week and a half in California, I went back to Brunei. I did the training for about a year, and I did it meticulously, like almost every day for a year, and slowly started to get better. But I reached a plateau. But I was better in the sense that I could start to think about what I wanted to do next with my life. And I decided to go back again to California.
So you went back to California a second time. And
Yeah.
what do you do there?
Yeah, this time I was not lying flat on my back all day, and I had a little bit of energy. So I thought I can do something with my life. Maybe not what I used to. I can definitely not sit at the desk all day, and I cannot work at the computer all day, but maybe it's something else I could do. So it's always been like kind of my dream to study in the West Coast in Stanford, and I've managed to do like a part-time course there. And I did a whole range of courses. One was a career transitioning course and Enneagram course and an entrepreneurship course. But one of the things in the career transitioning course, that was about 3 or 4 years ago now, um, I discovered, so rewinding a bit, I discovered that I was an INFJ about 4 years ago. So part of the career course used MBTI, and it was teaching us to find our career based on our MBTI. So I went to the course, I went through some of what they were saying as a potential career path for INFJs. And one of the career paths that stood out for me was coaching. And mind you, I've come from it's completely different to anything I experienced. And coaching, just before I was due to leave California for Brunei, there was a coaching program there. And I thought, what the heck, I'm just going to sign up for this coaching program. It's got a money back guarantee. If I don't like it, I have nothing lost. So I decided to go for that coaching program.
So was it an easy decision to switch over to like train as a coach over there in California?
Actually, it was probably one of the hardest decisions I made, actually, or had to make, because at the back of my mind is this thing, like, I've spent all like 10 years in investment banking and finance. I'm a chartered financial analyst. I spent pretty much my whole career doing this thing. Wouldn't it be such a big waste if I didn't use it in my future career? So I was toying this back in my mind for like a few years. But I did all this while I was continuing with my coach training. And something that helped quite a lot was like slowly getting in touch into my emotions, and slowly getting into touch with having deep conversations, which I really enjoyed.
So obviously you didn't stay there for long.
No, I
with
went
the coach training.
Yeah, the coach training. I after that initial session, I went back to Brunei. I decided to think about my experience, and I enjoyed coaching so much. I kind of got the coaching bug, and I decided to go back to California for a third time to finish my coaching program. At the same time, I was starting to get really into the Enneagram, because I started one semester at Stanford. I did a Enneagram course there. So I actually wanted to train as an Enneagram teacher as well. So I went back in the summer of that year, 3 years ago now, and decided to spend 20 days and 20 nights in Menlo Park, California, training as an Enneagram teacher. And that was actually a really life transformational experience. We were living in small huts. We had a lot of time to learn about the Enneagram with each other. We had really deep connections, and it was something really complex, which I felt I could use for the rest of my life. But the biggest thing I learned in that Enneagram course was that my fibromyalgia was actually related to my emotions. A lot of it could be related to emotions. So we had the foundation training part, which was the physical, which I kind of reached a plateau, and MBTI is more mental. So I was kind of making small incremental steps. So the Enneagram itself gets to the core of who we are and our identity, as well as some of the deepest emotions that drive us. And so I really learned from there was a lot of deep emotions that I had to deal with, a lot of pain that I was carrying, and a lot of the pain in my entire body could be kind of traced back to my heart. That my heart was in tremendous pain. I'd been carrying a lot of pain of abuse from young and growing up. And not only I learned the pattern of abuse, I was kind of abusing myself in terms of how hard I was pushing. So and that kind of took a toll on my body, and that's something I really learned. I had to slow down. I had to slowly learn to love myself, to love my heart, and to really give myself the love and care that's not there. And because of that, I've been working with it now for about 3 years. I've seen incremental and slow improvements and through a change of lifestyle, and completely getting into touch some of the deepest emotions that were buried and had caused me a lot of pain.
So you found that interconnection between these different areas and link it back right to yourself and your heart.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, after peeling back the layers of the physical, the mental, I finally traced it back to emotional, and the emotional pain of the heart, which I kind of still working on and still working with. But I find that the more I work with it, the more kind of healthy I get emotionally, the less physical pain I'm in, I mean, it's obviously not something that scientists who are probably ISTJ scientists will verify, but it's something which I feel I know to be true for myself.
So is that what that all this that you have learned, is that what brings you back to Singapore, or is that something else that brings
Yeah,
you back to Singapore?
I've always kind of wanted to live in Singapore. I was born and grew up in UK, and I've lived in Asia for the last 12 years. And my parents are Singaporean, so I've always kind of had affinity to come here and live here and do something here. So at this point in time, I decided to move away from Brunei to a larger city. Kind of wanted a place where I could start developing my ideas and integrating, mind, body, and emotions, and coming up with some kind of way in which I can help people and develop my experiences from what I've done. So I've been kind of experimenting for about a year and a half in many different areas.
So what mainly you have been doing ever since you're in Singapore?
I think one thing I've been doing, which is quite big, is writing a memoir. I was working as a coach for about a year ago, and I was telling him about my experiences. I'm looking for a changing career direction. And my coach suddenly looked at all my life experiences and said, "You know what? I think you've got a book in you." And I was like, no way. I mean, writing's my worst subject in school. English lit was like, I was never on my radar. I was more math and science. But then this slowly dawned on me, about a year ago, it was started that, hey, hang on, there is quite a story here. And if you've heard a little bit about it, but there's something I can use and something which I can write about to help other people with fibromyalgia and raise some awareness about this condition. And especially in US, so in Asia is especially not very well known. In US, there are about 10 million fibromyalgia sufferers, but it's still not very well understood, and people don't really understand the kind of day-to-day struggles which we have to face. As you said, I look okay, but and most of us do look okay, but there's a battle behind the exterior that nobody quite understands. So I'm trying to draw some on my own life experiences and going deep into myself and trying to find out some of the root causes of it, and write a memoir about how I struggled with it and what I faced, and perhaps some to get to where I am today.
So how does memoir writing suit INFJ?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think memoir writing suits an INFJ very well. It's something that I feel that is quite unique to INFJs. We spend a lot of time digging into ourselves. We spend a lot of time analyzing our inner core motivations and ideas. And if someone says something to us, we are most likely going to replay that same sentence again and again, trying to understand what that meaning is. Exactly what do they mean by that? And so when we do that, we have this natural affinity for replaying sentences. And that's what good memoir writing is all about. It's about taking the emotional experience that you have had at that point in time and writing it down, and so it's applicable to a wider audience. And especially with memoirs, like supposedly I'm writing about my grandmother, when you read it, you're not really thinking about my grandmother, are you? You're thinking about your grandmother. So a good memoir is something that takes from your own life experience and transports and takes it and kind of projects it out. So there's something universal about all grandmothers in the world, something that you can touch and reach someone's heart. And memoir writing is very intimate. When you read a book, someone you feel like they are having a personal conversation with you. And INFJs like to connect on a very deep level, and memoir writing allows you to connect with someone anywhere in the world and on a very deep and personal level that maybe you can't have that conversation in real life.
So speaking about connecting with INFJ, you set up this INFJ group. Yeah.
Yes.
What made you do that?
Yeah, that's quite interesting. Yeah, I've been in Singapore about a year and a half. But my first real life INFJ experience, I got to bring it back to my coaching times in California. So I met the first INFJ in real life in that career transition course and the coaching course, and then later on I met more INFJs in the Enneagram course. So we had some of these conversations together, and I remember one of them said to me, I've been waiting to have these conversations my whole life. And then one of them joined in and said, when we talk, it's about the ebb and flow. There's equal ebb and flow. There's an equal amount of giving and receiving, and it's something that is quite rare because we interact with the other 99% of the population most of our lives. And if you see some of in the career workshop, some of the questionnaires. I've asked people whether they've met any INFJs in their workplace, and they really quite haven't. And whether the company is 30 people or 100 people, they don't really interact. And when you interact with other types, you kind of have to wear a mask, and you kind of have to dumb it down a bit in a way that other person can understand, because we're expert chameleons. We can show the aspect of ourselves that can connect very well with someone, but it's not our true self. And to really connect on our true self and our deepest levels, I don't think there are many, maybe no other types who can meet us at that level. And so there's something quite unique for an INFJ group. So I wanted to find whether there's other INFJs here in Singapore where we can have these kind of conversations. And if not, I thought if there isn't any, I'm going to just start a meetup and see who comes.
So, being an INFJ group, so definitely you must have a vision for this group also.
Right. Yeah, I think my vision for the group is so that for INFJs to come and meet together and have these conversations, but also on the larger level is for them to help discover themselves, to know who they really are, and to know that we are not alone and isolated in the world, and feeling understood, because I think that's one of the biggest needs of us as INFJs, to actually feel understood at our deepest levels, that we're not weird people, and we're not weird, and we don't have to wear a mask all the time. At the same time, this careers workshop as well is to discover like how we best show up in the world. We can show up in many different ways, and how we can come together to exercise our INFJ talents. Maybe like INTJs work together to do rocket science and figure out black holes. We can come together and talk together about people, relationships, feelings, and explore these concepts in great depth, so we can find a way to bring out INFJ unique talents, abilities, and gifts, and share it to the world, to make the world a better place in whatever field we're in.
Okay, that sounds really exciting. So I look forward to hearing from the other INFJs tonight. Thank you, Ping-Chung.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kevin.